So now we're going to start with the third chapter, that is physiography and drainage. We will see the different physiography of the country of India as well as of Brazil. Now I've divided this chapter into different sections and different parts. So now in this part we will be doing the physiography of India. Alright, now what do you understand by the word physiography? Physiography is another word for physical geography. Now, by the word physical, you'll understand that it is the different features or different landforms on the surface of the earth. So you have your mountains, you have your different water bodies, the different kind of topography on the surface of the earth. Alright, some places we have the mountainous regions, some places we have islands, some plateaus, sorry. Some places we have islands, some places we have the coastal region. So all this comes under physical geography. In this video, we'll understand the physical geography or the physical features that are there in India. Now, mainly, India is divided into five major physiographic divisions. So, if you see the northernmost part of India on this map, the brown shaded region, this is the first division known as the Himalayas, mostly mountainous regions. Alright. Now, the next region over here, this yellow shaded as well as this light green shaded region all the way up to northeastern plains. Okay. This is known as your North Indian plains. This is the most fertile land because of all the rivers flowing through it. Majorly River Ganga and its tributaries flow from it. So you have very rich alluvial soil to carry out with agriculture. Now in some places they've divided this part, the yellow shaded part separately, and they call it the desert division or the desert region, but this is not there in your textbook. So we consider this shaded region under North Indian plains. Moving southwards over here, most of the central as well as the southern parts of India, most of the Deccan Plateau, it comes in the third division known as the peninsula. Okay, the fourth division will be this dark green shaded region. If you see the location of it, you will understand that these are the coastal plains. So you have your western coastal plain and the eastern coastal plain. And the last division will be these groups of land that we have over here, known as the islands. This side we have Lakshadweep, this side we have Andaman and Nicobar. So these will be your island groups. So this is how India is divided into five separate physical divisions or physiographic divisions based on their physical features. So Himalayas will have mostly the mountainous regions, North Indian plains you'll have plain region with rich alluvial soil, then you have your peninsula, the central, the Deccan Plateau region, the coastal part areas, and the last will be your island groups. So now we'll move forward to see each division in detail. Okay, the first division we saw Himalayas, a little backstory about the Himalayas. There was a theory proposed known as the plate tectonic theory. I won't get into the detail of it, just give you a basic idea of what it is. So in this theory, what it proposed that there were different pieces of landmass on the earth known as plates. Okay. Now all these plates slowly started moving towards each other or away from each other because of different forces. Again, not going in detail, but endogenetic and exogenetic forces that took place on the continental crust and the layers below it. So because of that, there was movement of these lands. Now over here, if you see, there is a Eurasian plate, okay, and this is the the Indian landmass. Now this landmass slowly started moving towards this Eurasian plate. Now if you see this, the movement over here, they mention the different years. You don't have to remember all this, just understand the story. So we understand the formation of these Himalayas. So this landmass started moving northwards towards, and here there was the Eurasian plate. So we have the Eurasian plate here, we have the Indian landmass over here. Now what happened when it moved northward? It collided with this Eurasian plate and it started folding. The land over here started folding. So if you consider this as a Eurasian plate, alright, and this as your Indian landmass, what happened was both of them started moving towards each other, more of the Indian landmass moving towards the Eurasian plate. So there was a land fold, if you can see these. Now, for example, if you to understand this in a better way, take a paper page or a paper on a flat surface. Put both your hands on both the ends of this paper. Place your hand here and here and push the paper or push your hands towards each other. When you do that, you will find folds or different creases forming over here in the center of the paper. This is exactly how the Himalayas were formed. Okay. So Himalaya is known as a young fold mountain. Young because it was made in the more recent years compared to the other mountains that are formed in the world. Okay, so it's a young fold. Why? Because we saw how it crashed or it merged with the Eurasian plate and the land started folding up. Okay, now what happens is this land is still moving in present day. That's why they say that the Himalayas is still growing slowly each year. It's a very slow, less difference, so you don't understand it immediately, but they say it is growing still. Okay, it is a major mountain system in the Asian continent because it has the Himalayas. We know Himalayas has the highest peak. So in the Asian continent, it is one of the major mountain systems. So this was the formation of the Himalayas. It's not mentioned in your textbook. It's just taught to you for a better understanding and to have a base of it. Now, if you see here again, if you take this as your Eurasian plate, you take this as your Indian landmass. So first, the folds took place here. So first you can see there were folds over here. Slowly this shifted more and more towards the Eurasian plate. So there were more folds here and this is how southward the folds will be formed. So the oldest one will be the first fold that was formed over here. Then moving on to the second fold, third fold and the fourth fold. Now they are known as different names. The oldest one is known as the Trans-Himalayan. In your textbook it's given as the Trans-Himalayan. Okay. Then the second oldest one will be the Greater Himalayas. After the Greater Himalayas, we have the Lesser Himalayas, and then we have the Shivaliks. Okay. So Shivaliks will be the youngest fold mountain in the Himalayas. Now the extent. If you see, this is the whole Asian continent. Alright. On the west side, we have the Arabic countries, Central Asia over here. We have Russia on top, China. On the eastern side, we have North Korea, Japan, southeastern countries over here, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand. And in the south of Asia, we have India and its neighboring countries. So over here, you can see the extent of Himalaya, this blue purplish kind of region. It's all the way from Tajikistan. It's a country in the Central Asia, all the way up to the east. So this is the extent. Part of the Himalayas pass from India as well. Okay, now over here in India, you can see on the right hand side, it extends from Jammu and Kashmir in the north all the way up to Arunachal Pradesh in the east. So this is the land or the part of India that is covered by the Himalayas. Now we saw that it is not a single range because there are different folds that took place from the oldest to on the north to the youngest in the south. Okay, so they are parallel ranges. So if you go from south to north, from downwards, the youngest one will be here, known as the Shivaliks. Okay, then we have the Lesser Himalayas, then we have the Greater Himalayas, and the most oldest range will be the Trans-Himalayan range. Alright, here you can see the color coding and the shadings. And the oldest will be the Trans-Himalayan. Okay, now there's another way to also differentiate or divide the Himalayas, not only based on the age or the time they were formed, but also based on the location. So this was division of the Himalayas based on the time they were formed. All right. Now based on their and these are parallel to each other. You know what are parallel ranks, right? So they are parallel ranges. Based on the location, we'll have three major divisions. First one will be this green shaded region known as the Western Himalayas. Then we have the Central Himalayas and then the Eastern Himalayas. So Central, you can remember anything on the left hand side we see is the Western region. So this will be the Western Himalayas. Anything towards the right hand side will be your east. So these are the Eastern Himalayas. So this is another way to divide the Himalayas based on their location in India. Western Himalayas are also known as Kashmir Himalayas because they're present mostly in the Kashmir region. Central Himalayas known as the Kumaon Himalayas and Eastern Himalayas known as the Assam Himalayas. Okay, Assam is in the east, so you'll understand when you have a map plotting, you can remember this and you can shade this region, shade the region, all right, for Eastern Himalayas, if asked. Next, moving on to the second division known as the Northern Plains. Now, this lies below the Himalayan region. Okay, so here we have the Himalayan range, here as well as here, this whole part. And below we had seen the Peninsula region, or the Peninsula of India. So, between these two lies your North Indian Plains or the Northern Plains. Okay, it extends all the way up to Rajasthan in the west, all the way in Assam in the east. Okay, this is the extent of the northern Himalayas. And like I said, it's mostly a flat, low-lying area. Now, the North Indian plains are divided into two major parts. One is the Ganga plain and one is the Thar desert. So, you will have your North Indian plains. Then they are divided into two parts. Okay, one will be your Thar desert and the other one will be your Ganga plain. All right. So, if you see, mostly your Ganga plain start from here all the way up to this. This will be your Ganga plain, and this region will be known as your Thar desert. So visualize all this. Don't mug up. When you study the physiography, you need to visualize things and understand their location. Only based on that will you able to understand it and explain it and answer your questions. So let us see the first subdivision, that is the Ganga plains or the eastern part. Here you can see this light shaded region. This is your Ganga plain. Alright, from here to here till this extent. Now the part lying to the east of the Aravalli is the basin of the river Ganga. So here we have your Aravalli ranges. To the east of the Aravalli range is your Ganga plains. That's why it's also known as the eastern part. It slopes eastward because why eastward? The slope is mostly this way because your rivers are flowing east flowing rivers, right? Eastward. River Ganga flows in this direction. So the slope is this way eastward. Now, most of the West Bengal state, that is the state, and the Bangladesh country, both of them, when you have most of these regions, are covered and they form the Sundarban Delta. And it's also known as the Delta of Ganga and Brahmaputra system. Now, what do you understand by the meaning of delta? Now you have your river flowing, alright, from here you have Ganga, from here you have Brahmaputra. They both meet in Bangladesh, okay, this is West Bengal here, and then they meet the sea of Bay of Bengal, okay. This part where the river meets the sea is known as your delta. Now, what happens in the delta is there are a lot, when the river is flowing, there are a lot of sediments, different small particles of soil, sand, silt. So, all of this gets deposited, it's left behind. Deposited, matlab, it gets left behind here, and the water flows in the sea and meets the sea. Now, why it's left behind? Because this is heavy, right? So, you leave this behind, it gets settled down over here, and the water keeps flowing. Still, there are small sediments or small particles that are very light and they also get carried away in the sea. This formation over here of the deposition of all these particles of sand and soil over here forms your delta. So, this region, if you see, is your Sundarban Delta. It is one of the largest deltas in the world. This is the satellite image of your Sundarban deltas. Over here, we can see all the different paths of the river trying to meet the Bay of Bengal, if you can see here. Now, these different paths of the river form different land masses because of deposition of soil and sand particles. This forms a delta. This is your Sundarban. Sundarban has 102 islands, and out of this 102, only 54 islands are habituated. That is, only in 54 islands there are people living. Alright, this is an extra information not mentioned in the textbook. Now let's go to the western part of the northern plains. This part. Here you can see your Aravalli range on this map. So this becomes the west of the Aravalli range. Towards the west of the Aravalli range is your Thar desert. Okay. Now the western part of the North Indian plains is occupied by a desert. Most part of Rajasthan. It is spread west to the Aravalli and the Delhi ranges, like I explained over here. The north of the desert lies in the plains of Punjab. So it's not only in the Rajasthan region, it's part of Rajasthan and partly or a very little part covered in the plains of Punjab. Now the slope of the plains are westwards. This is the direction in which the plains are. In the eastern part we saw the slope of the plains are eastwards. Okay, towards the east. The plains are formed because of the deposition of all the rivers around it. So, like I said, rivers carry particles, and based on their size, they keep getting settled or deposited at different places. So, if it's a heavy soil particle, it will get deposited first, and then so on. It keeps moving till the mouth of the river where it forms a delta and meets the sea. Okay, now this plain is mostly formed because of the deposition work done by the Satluj river over here and the different tributaries of Satluj. It's not, you cannot see it here, but there are different tributaries that contribute to the formation of this plain. Okay, the soil over here is very fertile and agriculture is practiced on a large scale. So there is fertile soil, there is availability of water. Therefore, if you know that Punjab, the major occupation in Punjab is agriculture because it has a lot of rivers correct surrounding it. Then let's move on to the next plane, next division, physiographic division, that is the peninsula. It lies to the south of the northern plains. This is our northern plains. Okay, okay. This is your eastern part where the slope is eastwards, and this is your western part where the slope is westwards. Okay, here you have your Aravalli ranges dividing this North Indian plains. Now, to the south of this, over here we have our peninsula region. It consists mainly of plateau and hilly ranges. If you can see, you have your Vindhyas and your Satpuras in the central part, the Vindhya range and the Satpura range. Over here, towards the west of the peninsula region, you have your Western Ghats, and towards the east, we have the Eastern Ghats. So your peninsula is mostly covered from all sides by different mountain ranges. Okay, Aravalli Range is an old fold mountain and the oldest fold mountain in the north. Next division is your coastal plains. Like I said, this will be your western coastal plains and this will be the eastern coastal plains. These are the different coasts of India. All right. Now, India has a coastline of almost 7,500 kilometers. If you start measuring it from here all the way up till here, this becomes 7,500 kilometers almost. Okay. It lies to the west and the eastern side of the peninsula region. Now let's understand the difference between the western coast and the eastern coast. Western coast borders the Arabian Sea. Okay, one minute, let's write here. So this will be western coast. This will be your eastern coast. So this borders which sea? The Arabian Sea, whereas the eastern coast borders the Bay of Bengal. Now on this coast mostly there are rocky regions. But here, since there are a lot of rivers flowing eastward, you have a lot of deposition that takes place. So here you have depositional work of rivers. So you can expect this to be mostly plain, whereas western coast is rocky. Alright, this is the second point. Third point is that the rivers originating from the Western Ghats are short and swift. So from the Western Ghat, when you have the rivers originating with them, they start from here. From here they start and soon they meet the Arabian Sea. So the path of the river is short and very swift, whereas the east flowing rivers that originate from western as well as eastern Ghats meet the sea. So some rivers originate from the western Ghats, and they flow eastwards, and some originate from the eastern Ghats and flow eastwards here. So they all open up or meet up in the Bay of Bengal. Okay. The fourth point is that the western coast, they form estuaries and not deltas. Whereas the eastern coast, you can see deltas. There is gentle slope of land, therefore the rivers flow at a less velocity, and so there is a lot of deposition of sediments. Velocity meaning speed. Okay. Now, if you have a steep slope, steep मतलब direct ऐसे change हो रहा है, the altitude of the mountain or the slope is changing very fast. So here your water will flow at a faster rate. From high to low, water will flow at a faster rate. But if you have a very gentle or gradual slope, where the difference of your altitude is of the slope is changing very slowly, then your even river flows at a slower rate. So here on the eastern coast, there is a gentle slope of land. So your rivers will flow at a lower speed or a lower velocity. Therefore, when it's flowing slowly, all the sediments settle down here. So there is more deposition. When there is a steep slope, water is flowing fast. Therefore, because of the force of the water, all the sediments are carried away with the speed of the water. Alright, but if it's flowing very gently, very slowly, then the sediments have time to settle down and there's a lot of deposition that takes place. Okay, because of deposition, it meets the river and meets the sea and it forms the delta. Here you can see this is your eastern coast, a part of the eastern coast, where you can see your delta formation here. But if you saw, the rivers over here are very short and very swift, so they have a very small path, so they don't form deltas because the more or the longer the river, the more sediments or the more particles it carries when it's flowing and then it deposits it. But if it's a small or a shorter river, it has carried very little sediments and it will deposit also very little of the sediments. So there is no delta formation as such. it forms an estuary. Okay, now what is an estuary and what is a delta? This is, if you see, part of your western coast. This is your estuary. Okay, now estuary is when directly your river flows and meets the sea. There is very less deposition taking place. So if you see this image, you can see directly the river and it will go further and meet the sea. But a delta will form depositions of sediments, different land masses will be formed, and slowly we'll have parts of the river trying to meet the sea. Okay, that's the difference between an estuary and a delta. Estuary is direct meeting of river and sea. Delta is not direct because there is deposition of sediments taking place and then land masses are formed. So there is a little obstruction for the river to meet the sea. So it's not direct. So understand the whole working of it. Why there is an estuary, because there is a short and swift flow of river, and because of that you have a less sediments carried in the river, and therefore there are less depositions and there is a direct meeting of a river to the sea. Whereas in the eastern coast, we saw that a lot of rivers originating from the western coast also flow eastward. So here you can see that the path is longer. They have a lot of sediments carried and a lot of deposition taking place on the eastern coast. Because of that, there are deltas forming different land masses and then the river meeting the sea. The last one is the island groups. There are a lot of small as well as large islands that are formed. We know what are islands, large land masses that are covered from all sides with water. Okay. Now there are two large group of islands. One is the Lakshadweep, that is in the Arabian Sea in the west, and the other one is the Andaman and Nicobar group of islands that is in the east in the Bay of Bengal. Okay. So again, if you see your peninsula, you have your western coast, eastern coast. Here we have Bay of Bengal. Here we have Arabian Sea. This is where your Lakshadweep Islands are present, and over here you have your Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Okay. Now the Lakshadweep Islands are mainly atoll islands. I'll explain what is atoll. Okay. They are mainly atoll islands. Whereas in the Andaman and Nicobar, you have volcanic islands. Okay. And some places you have these atoll islands. Volcanic islands, we know, mountains from where magma is flowing under the earth's surface, and when it comes up, it flows as lava. Okay, this is known as a volcanic eruption. So here in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, mostly there are volcanic mountains. Okay, now the Lakshadweep Island is small in extent. The mountain ranges also are very small in extent, and they are not very high. Okay. But in Andaman and Nicobar, there are large mountain ranges with hills in the interior part. And the most active volcanic island, or the most active volcanoes in the island, is the Barren Island. Over here in Barren Island, you have most of the volcanic activities taking place. Now, what is active? Matlab? It is still going on. Again, there's a chance that a volcano can take place. But a dead volcano, meaning the volcanic activities no more take place over here. But an active, it can take place at any given time. So if you see location, here we can see this is our western coast. You have Goa, Karnataka and Kerala. To the west of that, we have this group of islands. It's not one island, there are small different islands. If you see, they are known as Lakshadweep Islands. The capital of Lakshadweep is Kavarati. Location of Andaman and Nicobar, if you see, this is the eastern coast. To the east, in the Bay of Bengal, is the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Here we can see the different islands, and this is a group of islands. You have your North Andaman, Middle Andaman, South Andaman, then you have your Little Andaman Island, and then you have the Car Nicobar Island and the Great Nicobar Island. Alright, here you can see Barren Island. Most active volcanoes are present over here in the Barren Island. So this is the location of the island groups. Now, what is an atoll? This is how an atoll is formed. You have an active volcano. Okay. Slowly, this volcano dies, or the volcanic activity stops in this mountains. So it becomes a dead volcano. Okay. Now, around this island, there are different corals that are formed. Okay, different land masses that are formed over here. This stay above, whereas the central part, this mountain, slowly starts submerging. Okay, and it's left only with the surrounding water or land mass. This is known as your atoll, and this is how mainly Lakshadweep islands are, like atoll islands. If you see, this is one of the Lakshadweep islands. You can see the land mass over here, and here are mostly submerged. Matlab they are underwater, but the bordering parts are still above. So this form your atoll islands. Okay, this shaded regions, which are still on top. But central part is gone underwater or submerged underwater. Okay, this is a picture of the barren island. Here you can see an active volcano. So most of the volcanic activities in the Andaman and Nicobar take place over here. For this lecture, we saw the physiographic five major divisions. First one was the Himalayas. We saw the youngest fold mountains, how it was formed, the different parallel ranges from the oldest, that is your Trans-Himalayan, then you have the Greater Himalaya, Lesser Himalaya, and then the Shivaliks. Shivaliks being the youngest. Okay, we saw their location, then we moved on to see the North Indian plains. There are two parts of it. They are divided by the Aravali range. So the east of the Aravali range is your Ganga plain. We saw the Sundarban deltas over there, mainly in the West Bengal and Bangladesh region. And then to the west of the Aravali range, we saw the Thar desert. Okay. Then we moved on to see the third division, that was the Peninsula region. We saw it is covered by most of the mountain ranges. On top or the central part, we have your Vindhya range and the Satpura range. To the west, we have your Western Ghats, and the east, we have the Eastern Ghats. Alright. Then moving to the fourth division that we saw was the coastal plains, that was on the coastal region of India. We saw the western coast and the eastern coast. We saw the difference. Here you have short, swift rivers, less deposition taking place, therefore estuaries are formed. Okay, and in the eastern coast there are long paths of rivers taking place, originating from the Western Ghats as well as from the Eastern Ghats, entering the Bay of Bengal. A lot of depositions here because a lot of sediments are carried by this river, and here we have your delta formation. Okay, this was the major difference between the western and the eastern coast. Then we saw the last division, that was the island groups. We saw on the west we have your western coast, we have the Lakshadweep island, and in the eastern coast we have the, sorry, to the east of the eastern coast there is the Andaman and Nicobar island. We saw the Lakshadweep, mainly we have atoll kind of islands. Okay, we saw how our atoll is formed. And in Andaman, mainly volcano islands where there are active volcanoes taking place, and a few atoll islands. And then we saw that the barren island in the Andaman and Nicobar is the most a place where there are most active volcanoes taking place. So these were the topics that are covered in today's lecture, and I hope you all understood most of it. Um, the physiography of India. Please go through your textbook, read it, and you'll understand the explanation in a better way. Thank you.